When it comes to guns, there are three main parts: the barrel, the lower receiver, and the upper receiver. These parts can be put together in an almost infinite variety of ways to make lots of different guns. We go in to take a look at how each part is made, and then we see how they all come together to make one of the most popular guns in America. Let's start with the barrel. Gun barrels are made from solid steel forgings. A forging is a piece of metal that has been formed by hammering or pressing. In the case of a gun barrel, the forging starts out as a long, thin piece of steel that is heated up and then hammered into the rough shape of the barrel. Once the forging is complete, the steel is still too soft to be used in a gun, so it goes through a heat treating process where it is heated and cooled in a controlled way to make it harder and more durable. This process is called hardening. After hardening, the steel is coated with a protective finish to prevent it from rusting. The finished barrel is then threaded on one end to attach the bolt, and the other end is cut and chamfered to accept the action. Now we have a barrel, but it's just a pipe. We still need to drill the bore. This is the process of drilling the hole inside the barrel that the bullet will travel through. It's important to get this right because if the bore isn't drilled straight, then the gun won't shoot straight. The bore is drilled using a rotating tool called a boring bar. The boring bar is a long, thin piece of metal with a cutting tool on one end. It is inserted into the barrel and then rotated. As the boring bar rotates, it cuts into the barrel and creates the bore. Once the bore is drilled, the barrel is complete and ready to be assembled into a gun. Let's move on to the lower receiver. Like the barrel, the lower receiver is also made from a steel forging. The forging is cut, shaped, and drilled using a variety of metalworking tools. Once the basic shape of the lower receiver is complete, it goes to the milling machine where it is milled to the final dimensions. The lower receiver is then deburred, and any sharp edges are removed. The lower receiver is now complete and ready to be assembled into a gun. Let's take a look at the upper receiver. The upper receiver is responsible for holding the bolt and the firing mechanism. It is also responsible for providing the housing for the trigger and the hammer, or in the case of a semi-automatic rifle, the charging handle and the buffer tube. Like the other parts of the gun, the upper receiver is also made from a steel forging. However, the process of making the upper receiver is a bit more complicated than the other parts. This is because the upper receiver contains many small parts that must be precisely machined. First, the forging is cut and shaped to the general dimensions of the upper receiver. Then it goes to the milling machine where it is milled to the final dimensions. The upper receiver is then drilled and tapped for the various screws and bolts that hold the small parts in place. The small parts are then installed and the upper receiver is complete. Now that we've made the three main parts of the gun, let's put them together. First, the barrel is attached to the lower receiver. This is done by threading the barrel onto the lower receiver. Next, the upper receiver is attached to the barrel. This is done by inserting the barrel into the upper receiver and then securing it with a pin. The trigger and hammer are then installed into the upper receiver. The bolt is installed into the upper receiver and the gun is now complete. Every single gun goes through rigorous testing before it is approved for sale. One of the tests that every gun must pass is the proof test. The proof test is a destructive test that is designed to ensure that the gun is safe and reliable. To conduct a proof test, a round of ammo is inserted into the chamber and then the gun is fired. The pressure created by the round is what we call a proof load. If the gun can withstand the proof load, then it is considered to be safe and reliable and is given the green light for sale. But if the gun fails to withstand the proof load, then it is considered to be unsafe and is not allowed to be sold. We've taken a look at how guns are made and the science behind the assembly. Hopefully you learned something new. If you want to learn more about guns, stay tuned for more updates.